Hello everyone, and welcome to a special edition of The Vault. My name is Julie Fry and I am the curator at Stan Hywet Hall & Gardens. May 13th marks the 100th anniversary of FA stepping down from the Goodyear Tire Rubber Company. After World War I, the economy experienced a severe recession. It was actually the most severe recession until the recession of 2008 in our recent memory. And Goodyear was one of those companies that was really negatively impacted. The rubber industry all around worked on cash and also worked on extending credit to buy natural resources. So you needed raw rubber and you also needed cotton in order to make tires. And these materials needed to be on hand months in advance of the tires being made. So what many rubber companies, including Goodyear, would do would borrow these materials or pay for these materials on credit. And then after they'd sold the tires 3, 6, 9 months later, they would pay off of those debts. So this was a practice that was very common and one that Goodyear practiced often. After World War I ended, a lot of companies thought that the economy would recover really rapidly and that Americans would get back to kind of business as usual and get back to domestic spending, something that had been on hold during the war years. So FA anticipated that many people would start buying cars again or start maybe replacing tires on vehicles they owned that they'd put off during those war years. So he began to amass a big stockpile of these natural materials, raw rubber and cotton, anticipating that they would start to manufacture huge amounts of tires. But instead, the country fell into a recession. And Goodyear suddenly had all of this debt on their books that they needed to pay, and they weren't selling tires. So the company really fell into kind of a financial free fall at that point. FA worked tirelessly for about a year trying to get the company to turn around to get to a point of recovery, but it proved to be too challenging. He traveled around the Midwest, reaching out to different banks, asking for loans, which he did receive. Very often he was taking out personal loans under his own name aside from the company in order to try to meet payroll. He also used a lot of his own personal fortune and put that back into the company at the same time. Again, just trying to get things held together until the recession ended. By about January of 1921, however, things were not looking good, and the board of directors of Goodyear Tire Rubber Company decided to reach out to a refinance company in New York City. They initially approached Goldman Sachs, but Goldman Sachs didn't want to touch the company at that time, so they reached out to a smaller firm called Dillon & Read. So Dillon & Read accepted the contract, came to Akron, and began to kind of go the process of going over the books, looking at where cuts could be made and how to get Goodyear back on track. They did infuse millions of dollars into the company so that payroll could be met. But as all of this was happening, Dillon & Read saw an opportunity, of course, to make some money. They're business people. They saw an opportunity where Goodyear could not only be turned around, but could also really become an investment for them as a financial firm. And part of what needed to happen, of course, was that FA needed to get out of the way. So when they restructured the company, they set it up so that FA would be moved into a figurehead position, as would his brother Charlie. Two of them, as many of you know, were co-founders of the Goodyear Tire Rubber Company in 1898. So they presented this to him. The board of directors was the majority, at least, behind the decision. And both FA and Charlie declined. FA had said in many interviews after the fact that his priority was that Goodyear continued to be successful and continued to be financially solvent. Literally tens of thousands of people in Akron were employed by Goodyear, and he knew that for the company to close, it really wasn't an option because it would be so devastating for the city of Akron. And if it meant then that he himself needed to step down, he was willing to make that sacrifice kind of for the greater good. He was not interested in just being a figurehead. This was his company. He had literally birthed this from the beginning and kind of couldn't imagine just standing by and watching other people run the company. So on May 13th, 1921, he handed in his resignation, as did his brother Charlie on that same day, and he walked away from Goodyear. He took a break, about 6 months he took off. He went up to Hessel, Michigan, where his family had a summer home, and just relaxed and tried to regroup. And then by the end of 1921, I think it was around November, he and Charlie opened their second rubber company, which they called the Seiberling Rubber Company, and it was based in Barberton. And at the time, there were over 300 rubber companies in competition. So the Seiberling Rubber Company became the 301st company to enter the market. But in just about 7 short years, they rose in the ranks to become the 7th largest tire company in the country. So once again, that tenacity, that perseverance, that ingenuity that the Seiberlings were known for came into play to make their second rubber company just as successful as Goodyear. So this is a topic that is very complicated, and I'm actually looking forward to explaining more to you in future Vault episodes. It was not as simple as FA stepping down in 1921. There were a lot of lawsuits, litigation, behind doors conversations about whether FA would have the opportunity to maybe step back into Goodyear at some point, Goodyear and FA suing each other over numerous different topics. So it really dragged on into all through the 20s and even into the 1930s. It's a long but very interesting story, and we look forward to diving into it more in future Vault episodes. So stay tuned, and once again, thanks for joining me.